This is Road Noise, episode number 10. In this episode, I'm going to talk about 10 reasons I think we're stressed and what we might be able to do to fix that. Hello again, I'm Michael Blackston, your host for Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time, where we talk about the things that I'm thinking about and you're in the driver's seat alongside me on a road trip and we're having a conversation. In this episode, I decided to go back to one more of the podcast episodes that I had recorded earlier before I started officially doing this for a couple of reasons. The first reason is because it's been so crazy busy for me lately that I didn't get a chance to record an episode. I didn't go anywhere this week as far as a long travel date, which is rare, but it just was one of those weeks where I didn't get out. And so I didn't get to record an episode, and I'm so busy I didn't even get to get in the car and just drive somewhere and record an episode for you. And also, as I started listening to this one to see if I even wanted to just delete it from my system, I started realizing all of the parallels to my life lately that this podcast episode has in it. In other words, when you'll hear me talking about how stressed I've been lately and everything in this episode, well, it was recorded quite a while earlier from now, but it could have been this week. So I said this kind of fits. And then the other reason is because this is episode number 10, and this is an episode called 10 Reasons for Stress. And so I thought that kind of fit and was apropos. So without further ado, here is episode 10 of Road Noise, Life 1 Mile at a Time, 10 Reasons for Stress. Thanks for listening to Road Noise. I'm Michael Blackston, and if you're hearing road noise behind the sound of my voice, then that means that once again I am recording this podcast while on the road commuting to my destination in Carbon Hill, Alabama. Carbon Hill's not always my destination, but Alabama is frequently my destination as I travel all over the Southeast doing granite etching, which is what I do for a living. So I have these long commutes, and I want to use that time wisely and doing some of the things that I enjoy doing, one of which is podcasting. Today I wanted to talk about some things that cause stress in our lives. I am not that stressed of a person when you compare me to most people that I've talked to. If you compared my stress level to theirs, I think I handle things very well. But lately, there has been quite a lot of stress in my life because what I do for a living, there is feast or famine. There are a lot of peaks and valleys in whether or not I have work. Most of the time I have work pending, but sometimes I have work to actually go to, and sometimes it's just pending, and I'm waiting on the proper materials to be prepared for me to come do my part. And that can take a while. And this last little valley was about a 3-week time where I just hardly did anything. And yeah, I get a lot of housework done and stuff while I'm away. I got some blogs written and posted that I'd been wanting to do. And I was able to spend a little more time editing a podcast. But, you know, when you've got bills to pay, those things really need to take a back seat to paying your bills, and it got very stressful for me for the last couple of weeks because money became really tight. So as I knew I wanted to record a show today, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to talk about on this commute, and I started thinking about how glad I am that I've got somewhere to go and that business appears to be getting ready not only to pick up but to explode. This time of the year it gets very busy, and I'm preparing myself for that. I started thinking about why I had been so stressed and the things that I could do in my life, maybe some things in my life that I should do that I'm not doing to help relieve the stress, and maybe some things that I am doing that is causing stress that I should stop doing or maybe do differently. And I thought there's a good topic for a podcast. So I made a list of 10 things, 10 reasons behind our stress. Now, this is certainly not the be-all, end-all list of things that cause stress. These are just 10 things in the category of things that cause stress that I notice that I do. And so while hopefully I won't sound too preachy in this, but if I do, understand I'm preaching to myself. And you're getting to listen to what I'm telling myself because these are things I need to fix in my life or do better. And I think if I will heed these 10 things, then I will see the stress level in my life. I won't say it will all go away. Nothing's perfect, but I think I can relieve some of the stress that I have been feeling, and hopefully it will be helpful to you as well. So let's get to it. 10 reasons behind our stress. Number 1, we worry about things we can't control. The ups and downs of my job that I just talked about. I don't know what your job is, but certainly I'm sure there are pros and cons about your job. But if you think about it, a lot of the things that you worry about, aren't many of them things that you really have no control over? I think a lot of times we put worry on ourselves and put too much burden on our shoulders over things that we can't control. If I've got business pending in my job, and I know that when the business comes that it'll almost be too much for me to handle, then it may not be smart for me to go and pick up new clientele, because then when you add those to the ones I already have, when things do get busy, then it may be too much for me to handle. So I have to weigh those things, and it may just be that I need to prepare a little bit better financially for the downtimes. But that the downtimes are going to happen, and those are things that I cannot control. So just don't worry about them. Yeah, we need to be on top of it. I'm not saying to let them just sweep them under the rug or anything like that, but we do need to be on top of them. Worrying only adds stress, and I don't think that does anybody any good. So maybe the ups and downs of your job, or the pros and cons of your job, things that you cannot control, try not to worry about the things that are out of your hands. I know a lot of older people will worry about their children, and good luck not worrying about your children. I understand that. I'm a father of 2, but my children are both young and under my care, so I don't worry about them as much in the prospect of what I'm about to talk about. I'm talking about older people whose children have moved away from the house, and they worry about what's going on in their lives, how they're handling things, putting excess worry that really is beyond their control. My mother is really bad about this. She worries a lot about me and my sister and her grandkids, things that really she has no control over, but she lets it worry her, and it really stresses her out, and it raises her blood pressure, and that worries me about her, which is out of my control. You just have to, be concerned about it, make statements when statements need to be made, but don't let it worry you. You've done your job. So if you're one of those people who you've got children who maybe they aren't necessarily doing something they're supposed to do, while I'm not telling you not to have something to say about it, your mom, your dad, absolutely be involved. But when it comes to the things that you have no control over, it might be time to let go and let God on that. And that can be a wonderful stress reliever when you finally give it over to Christ and say, this burden is yours. I'm going to give it over to prayer and let your plan be your plan, God, in your time. And then the world around us is a big cause of worry for a lot of people that we can't control. While we can be change, someone once said, be the change you want to see in the world, and that is true. We can make a difference. You can't worry about the things that are beyond your control. You can be concerned, you can be active and be aware, help raise awareness. You can be a part of the solution, or try to be. But when you just worry incessantly about things you can't control, the stress will absolutely kill you. So let's just try to keep the things that are out of our control out of our worry. Not out of our mind, but just don't worry needlessly about it to the point where it stresses us out. So maybe if we can get a handle on that a little bit, hand those burdens over to the cross and let God take control of those things. Our stress, that will help our stress level. Number 2, we make things harder than they need to be. I know I'm one of the worst people to make things harder than they need to be. I'm always trying to reinvent the wheel. Things that work just fine the way they are, I tend to want to create a brand new way to do it. I guess because I'm artistic and I love the act of creation, I want to create a new way to do things, but that's not always the best mode of operation. A lot of times, most of the time in everyday life, if a good, solid way has been set forth, go ahead and do it that way and get the job done. Don't make something harder than it needs to be. I'll give you an example of this when it comes to editing my podcast. Most people, and if you're a podcast or an audio editor, you will know exactly what I'm saying. Most people don't hear a lot of the problems in a piece of audio that the person who created the audio hears. In other words, you're your own worst critic. And a lot of times we'll, in what's called post-production, when we're going back and we're messing with the little idiosyncrasies of the sound of the recording, a lot of times we'll overproduce. Well, I feel like I need to have a little more bass in my voice. I feel like this portion of the audio is louder than the other portion. And while there is something to creating a good, solid, and consistent sound, I'm one of those people who can overdo it. In my last editing situation, I had 3 people on mic. I had 2 tracks. One track was split between me and my wife on microphone, and the other one was my co-host. This was for the podcast Q1 Go, the theater show, which I co-host with Tony King. It's released every other week, and if you'd like to listen to it, just go on iTunes and listen to Q1 Go, the theater show. Look that up, and or better yet, go to our website, www.q1go.com, and listen from there, subscribe from there, and enjoy the website. But we had recorded an episode of that, and there were 3 of us, and at different times we would speak at different levels, and I decided that I wanted everyone to be speaking at the exact same level at every syllable of sound. I just decided that would be fantastic. I just kind of got into it, and I started editing and amplifying, raising and lowering the amplification of every peak of the volume for an hour-long episode for 3 different people, all to one even level. Now, when you listen back to it, if you're just a normal person who likes to listen to podcasts, you probably won't notice a whole lot unless you're listening to it or listening for it. But it just didn't sound as good as if I had left it alone and let it be natural. And if I had let it go and let it be natural, I would have cut at least 3 or 4 hours off of the post-production. I made it so much harder than it needed to be, and it stressed me out. I was behind getting it released. I was spending too much time doing that and away from my family. And I just decided from now on, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to record good audio, but it sounds fine the way it is, and I'm just not going to overproduce like that. I made it harder than it needed to be, and I wonder if that might be something that you do. Are you one of those people who has a hard time delegating? If it's something that you're involved with and you're over, delegate some of the responsibilities if it's too much for you to handle. Don't make everything harder than it needs to be. Maybe you need to manage a group of people doing a task, and it will get done more efficiently, faster, with a lot less stress. That's something to think about. So that's number 2. We make things harder than they need to be. Number 3, we don't give ourselves enough credit. As an artist, I'm a very insecure person. Insecurities haunt me. Even though I seem very confident to a lot of people, even arrogant at times, and I don't try to be, but I guess sometimes it comes across that way. I believe it does. And maybe that's an insecurity of mine. Maybe I'm being insecure about that. Maybe I don't sound as arrogant as I think I do, but I think I do. And as an artist, I just know that critique is hard to handle. So a lot of times I just don't give myself enough credit. I am over humble. I am overly humble at times. And that can be an issue. Yes, humility is a wonderful thing. I'll speak about that a little bit later as well. It's a wonderful thing, and it can help with relieving stress as well. But you don't want to be overly humble, because that can make you stressful, as it makes you look less upon yourself. Remember, even when it comes to terms of physical appearance, which a lot of us are insecure about, we are wonderfully made in the image of God, and God don't make ugly. So keep that in mind when you're trying to deal with your own insecurities. Give yourself the credit that you deserve. Understand that you are worthy. A lot of times I will wonder why anybody would want to listen to my voice. Why would anybody tune into a podcast and stay for more than a few seconds once they've heard the sound of my voice? I don't like my accent. I don't like the timbre of my voice. I don't like the way I enunciate my words. I don't like any of it. But nobody does. You have to remember that the way you sound to yourself doesn't sound the same to everybody else. And so when you compare what you hear on a recording to what you hear inside your head that's resonating in your skull, it's going to be different and therefore is going to sound weird. It sounds weird to you, but it doesn't sound weird to anybody else. I've been told so many times that people love the sound of my voice. I've been told that over and over again, and I don't understand why. But I do understand that that is a common insecurity. So just try to get over that. If you're somebody who is a vocal type of person, that might be something that you want to pay attention to. Understand that. If it's about your beauty, I've already said it. You are going to be your own worst critic about your beauty, about the way you look. Be proud of who you are. Be healthy. You want to embrace the type of physique and body and appearance that God gifted you with, but at the same time, you do want to have a healthy lifestyle because your body is the temple of God. And then you might wonder why you're qualified to do a certain thing. For instance, this podcast. Who am I to give you advice on Christian living, regular world living, any kind of living, when I have no degree? I didn't go to seminary. I'm no preacher. I'm no dietitian. I'm no doctor. I'm no psychologist. I'm just a guy living life. And given the experiences that I have, and hopefully they're right, and I'm hoping I can encourage you, what makes me qualified to do that? Well, just what I told you. I'm a guy living life. I'm right where you are. And that's why I feel like this podcast may be helpful to you, because I'm meeting you where you are. I'm not some guy that you need to look up to. I'm not some guy that is above you. I'm the guy right next to you that is trying to create a relationship with you, the listener. And we can create a better world by having a relationship with each other. So that's where I'm qualified. And I have to tell myself that, because otherwise my insecurities will take over and I will start to ask myself those questions and I will have a low sense of self-worth. So we don't give ourselves enough credit. Let's try to give ourselves the credit we deserve, and that will help relieve some of the stress. Number 4, we don't give others enough credit. I know a lot of times, because of the way technology has gone, we feel like we're leaving our elders behind. So many of them. Now, I do know a few of them who post on Facebook, and a couple of them who may have a smartphone. I know a couple that even have iPads. But for the most part, your elders are going to be behind you in technological advances and stuff, and because of that, we tend to think that we're smarter than they are, and we don't give them the credit they deserve. When in actuality, we need to remember that our elders have experienced a lot more than we have and have so much knowledge and information to give. We need to use them as a resource, respect them, and thank them when they're willing to give that knowledge to us. Our superiors at work also, we tend to want to have a bad attitude towards people who are our bosses, but that might not necessarily need to be how we need to hold to the situation. They may be there for a reason. They're probably there for a reason. They have experience and knowledge that you can learn from. So try to think of ways that you can create relationships with them to take their knowledge and then move yourself up to the next level through that. Teachers, I have a special... Wow, the person next to me just ran the red light. Guy next to me just completely ran the red light. We were stopped at this red light in Birmingham, and he had the green turn signal, but he just went straight through the red light. Anyway, teachers hold a special place in my heart. My mom was a teacher, and I cherish those people who have dedicated their lives to giving the knowledge that they've learned to our youths and to us to help us better educate ourselves. So give the credit that the people around you deserve, and you'll find yourself feeling good about that because you're acknowledging someone else and affirming them. I think that's a big way to relieve some stress. Number 5, we care too much about what others think of us. This is a biggie that we learned early in childhood, probably before school even started, but especially once we got into grade school, right? We worry about what other people think about us. We want to be in the popular crowd. We want to be liked. We want to be the guy everybody yells their name when they walk in the door, like Norm on Cheers. That's what we want. We want to be popular. We want to be recognized. Well, it doesn't always happen because there's always going to be someone who doesn't like you. That's just life. And no matter how hard you try, no matter what you've done to try to alleviate the situation, there are going to be people who just get a bad taste in their mouth when they're around you. And that's okay. If you can embrace that and know that you're not going to please everybody and just be happy with the person God made you, that will make all the difference in the world. You're going to be detractors. They're going to be negative Nancys. They're going to be people who live under ignorance and hate. You know who you are. Be happy with that and thank God for who you are. Don't care too much about what others think about us. And that's number 5. Number 6, we don't take enough time for ourselves. Everybody needs a little me time, especially if you've got a lot on your plate. Even if it's just for a few minutes a day, you need to step aside, get some quiet time, some time just for yourself. If you can find a way to do that, that is a wonderful stress reliever. And if you have a time you know that you can schedule it, when you know you're going to be able to do it, that makes it even better because it gives you something to look forward to throughout the day. I understand that some of us have such busy lives you can't schedule it, and it's really easy for me to say when I have 5-hour one-way commutes. I have a lot of me time. I'm able to do the things I enjoy doing, like podcasting. I can set this podcast up right next to me in the seat beside me as I drive and hold a microphone and record. And that is one of the things that relieves stress for me. I enjoy it so much, I can use that. I understand it's a lot easier for me. It doesn't have to be a 5-hour commute for you. It can be just 15 or 20 minutes of laying in a hot bathtub, just letting your back soak in the afternoon. And if you can set it up with your family and say, hey, okay, at 6 o'clock, this is what I want to do. Just however it needs to work for you, set aside just a little bit of time every day just to have some quiet time. Meditation, if you want to call it meditation. Just some you time. That is a big deal when it comes to helping relieve stress that you may have in your life. Give yourself something to look forward to. My wife likes to spend time on her books. She loves to read. I love to read, but I listen to a lot of podcasts too. She really will get involved in a book, and that's her happy place, to sit on the couch and read a book. So I like to be able to allow her that opportunity to do that. She's a mother. That spreads her thin. It's wonderful for her to get an opportunity to sit down on the couch and read her book. Or maybe at night, I like to allow her, before we go to bed, she'll sit down and lay in bed and play one of the games on her smartphone. So take some time for yourself at number 6. Number 7, we don't spend enough time serving others. Now, that may seem contradictory to what I just said. Wow, I'm already having a hard enough time finding a place in my day to spend time with myself. Now you're telling me I need to spend time with others. Which one do you want, Michael? Well, I understand that may sound a little bit contradictory, but you have to understand that for some people, spending time serving others may be their me time. I know people who get their relaxation by serving in a soup kitchen or giving coats to the homeless. That's what they enjoy doing. That's what makes them happy. And that's how they relieve their stress. And that's okay if that's you. I'm not saying that every day you need to serve soup for an hour in a soup kitchen. I'm not saying that every day you need to go out to the homeless and give coats away. That's a job. What I am telling you is to make that a part of your life when you can. Serve somebody. Because when you are serving others, that creates a sense of humility. That's what I was talking about earlier. If we have a sense in ourselves that the world owes us something, the world's not going to give you anything. And so what happens is when we have this feeling that the world owes us something, but they don't, but then it doesn't come through for us, that just adds stress. Whereas if you're serving others and you're creating a sense of not the world owes me something, but I'm going to give, then the world will give back. It comes in the form of humility. It comes in the form of less stress because you are being active in making a change for the better in somebody else's life. It's a wonderful thing that you ought to try. We don't spend enough time serving others. Number 8, we don't get enough exercise and we don't eat right. If you are the picture of health, then skip over this one, because I am not talking to you if you're the picture of health. Most people who are going to be listening to this, though, are not the picture of health. Like me, most people are obese or at least a little overweight. That's me. I'm a little overweight. The doctor wouldn't call me obese, but I do have about 20 pounds that I could use to lose. I'm about 20 pounds over my ideal weight. I can walk 5 miles a day, and right now I am trying, and I'm trying to do better eating. I didn't do so well at breakfast this morning, but okay, I fell down. I'm going to get back up and try to do well for the rest of the day, and I'm going to try to get my 5 miles in at the end of the day. But my point is, eating right and exercising does so many good things for a person's mentality. First of all, the activity of exercise in itself releases endorphins that makes you happy. It's been scientifically proven that exercising will chemically make you happy. Secondly, the overall feeling you'll get when you are healthy, you'll just feel so much better. My wife has some weight to lose, and I brought her, she was trying to lose about 25 pounds, and I brought her a weight, a 25-pound dumbbell. We were trying to do a visual, and I said, baby, think about it. I said, lift this dumbbell. She could hardly move the thing. I mean, it was this steel thing sitting on the floor, and I mean, she could pick it up, but it was extremely heavy for her to just pick up. And I said, imagine that you're carrying that around right now. I said, imagine how good you're going to feel once this much weight is off. And she said, I'm going to feel like I'm floating on air. And it was a great visual. And it was true. She was going to feel so much better. And she is feeling better as the weight is coming off. She's feeling better. As the weight is coming off me, I'm feeling better. And it's relieving stress. The accomplishment of seeing those goals being reached relieves stress. Now, as far as the health goes, I'm considering doing some health-related stuff along with this podcast at a later time. I haven't decided exactly how I'm going to go about doing that, but I do have a journey that I'm going to be on. I just don't want to sound like everybody else who has a health journey that they're trying to get people to follow them along on. I want to do it in a unique, educational, and informative way, and entertaining way as well. So we'll go into that at a later time. But diet and exercise, getting yourself right, getting the temple of God that is your body in the right way is enormous when it comes to relieving your stress. So number 8, we don't get enough exercise and we don't eat right. So keep that in mind. Now the last two are going to be issues that we deal with on a spiritual level. Number 9 is we don't spend time with God. Obviously, I am a devout Christian, but I don't spend the time with God that I need to spend with Him. I don't spend enough time in prayer, and I don't spend enough time in the Holy Bible. And I don't feel like I'm gambling when I say everybody that's a Christian would probably tell you, I shouldn't say everybody. I would say 99.9% of the people who say they are Christians would tell you they don't spend enough time in the Word or in prayer. Because we're human, and there are so many things that the devil tries to occupy our minds with to keep us away from that type of thing. The world is constantly vying for our time, and we give that time to the world and not to God. That's one of the reasons we have so many burdens. Well, that right there is the number one way to relieve your stress. Lay your burdens at the foot of the cross. Give them over to God. That's why He's there, because He loves us and He wants to be there for us. He wants us to call on Him. He wants us to lean on Him to help us in our times of need. And He's always there listening. So we can pray a couple of ways. We do need to be praying every day in a pointed and specific manner. Things that are going on specifically in our lives, God wants us to pray about them. Yes, He knows about them. You're not going to surprise him with anything. But he wants to hear it come from you. Your expression of faith in praying for your needs to God shows him that you know you can hand things over to him. You know you can lean on him. And your faith will show that you expect that he will take care of you. It might be in his own time and his own plan, but he will take care of you. But prayer is supposed to be without ceasing, right? Doesn't the Bible say pray without ceasing? I was speaking to my stepfather about this the other day. My stepfather is a wonderful man of God, and he and I got on the subject of praying without ceasing because, it's impossible to actually pray without ceasing. We do have to work. We do have to have relationships with other people. We can't exactly truly pray without ceasing as far as actively talking. What I believe that means is to keep the lines of communication with God open at all times. Never stop with the opportunity to pray. In the middle of the day today, I may be sitting there etching on a stone, and something may come into my mind that I need to speak with God about. Well, the lines of communication are always open. I can just speak it, God, about this situation, and just speak it. I think praying without ceasing means keeping the lines of communication with God open 24 hours a day. Yeah, go to sleep with those lines of communication open, and you'll go to sleep. I will tell you, when I've fallen asleep praying, that's some of the best sleep I've ever had. But keep the lines of communication open always, and that, to me, is what praying without ceasing means. Speaking of going to bed praying, I've had some people tell me, I don't like to pray before I go to bed, or at least I don't like to pray as I'm laying down sleeping. I like to kneel at the foot of my bed, and if that's what you want to do, wonderful. That's absolutely no problem at all. But I like to pray myself to sleep. I like to go to sleep and fall asleep in the middle of a prayer, because how precious is it to know that the very last thing you said and the very last person you spoke to was your Savior before you fell asleep. How comforting is that? I don't think it's disrespectful at all. That's my opinion, and that's something I like to do. So spend enough time with God. Spend all the time you can with God. The more time you spend with Him, the less stressed you're going to be. That's the number one key to relieving your stress, at least in a Christian's life. And number 10, we don't spend enough time in Christian fellowship. And that means going to church, small groups, spending time with like-minded believers. I do know some people who are Christians but don't go to church, and if it ever comes up, they'll tell you, I don't have to go to church to be a Christian. I don't have to go to church to worship. And this is true. You do not have to go into the building of a quote-unquote church to do your worship. You can come to the throne of God wherever you are at any time of the day. That is absolutely true. But there's a reason that it is important for a Christian to have a church home and a fellowship of believers that he or she can meet with. It recharges your Christian batteries. Lately, I've been going to church on Sunday mornings. Not on Wednesday night, not on Sunday night, and I don't believe I have to enter the kingdom of heaven. I've accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, so I believe that that's what I needed to do. I try to live my life for Him, as a witness for Him to others. That's what's going to get me there. The grace and mercy and the blood of Christ is what saves me. But I want to be where He is, and if there's a group of people celebrating that and getting together to worship Him, I want to be there too. Now, the argument I get a lot of times, and this is a whole different subject, I may do an entire podcast on this, is, but there are hypocrites and people who are in it for money, and I don't like to hear this, and I don't like this. If your Christianity and your obedience to what God asks relies on what people do, you're in a world of trouble. The church from the day Christ ascended was never perfect because people were involved. And God knew that. That's why we are to be together, to try to help each other out. There will always be people there, some who are hypocrites, some who are angry, some who are hurting. The church is a place for sinners to meet, to lean on each other, to worship, to help each other. And just because there are some bad seeds in every single one is no reason to blame it on the church and say the church has gone bad. The church hasn't gone bad because the church isn't what happens on Sunday mornings. The church is the body of Christ. The church meets in a building. Again, I can't remember who said, be the change you want to see in the world. I'll have to look that up. I think it was it Gandhi? It was somebody like that said, be the change you want to see in the world. That is so true, but it also goes for our churches. If you're the type of person who doesn't like hypocritical situations in churches, go be the change. Go be the authentic Christian in that place and model it. Do we really want to allow our churches to be places where the only models are hypocrites? No. Don't hide yourself from it because you don't like dealing with somebody else. Having a home church is very important. I will deal with the theology behind it on a later episode of this podcast, probably. I don't want to get into the debate because I do know several people who say they don't have to go to church every Sunday to worship, and that is absolutely true. You don't, but it is very important to have a church and to be active in a fellowship of believers, and I will talk about that at a later time. But I will say that it is a great stress reliever if you'll do that. If you'll find a group of believers, if you already have one, if you'll attend with them and fellowship with them more. And again, I'm talking to people who have an absence of these things in their lives. If you are the type of person who is at church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, and you go to every social and you go to every Bible study and you bring mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese to every potluck dinner, I'm not talking to you about that. You already have this in your life. I'm talking to the person who may be stressed and they're looking for extra ways to help relieve it. Find a good group of fellowship of believers. If you're not a Christian, you're welcome to listen to this podcast. I'm going to be talking from a Christian point of view, so I will be talking to Christians a lot on this, but that is not to the exclusion of anybody who is not a believer in Christ. I hope that one day you would be, but if not, you are also welcome to listen to this podcast. I love you, and I want you to understand that these things are supposed to be helpful to everybody, so even if you don't have a fellowship of Christian believers, but you have a good fellowship of friends, spend some time with them. Allow them to take those burdens for you. Because sharing burdens, it may seem like you're just taking more on if you're taking on someone else's burden. But actually, if you're helping someone else carry their burden, that is a big weight off your shoulders. God will use that to help lift the weight off your own shoulders. It's a blessing. And God rewards us those ways. So number 10, we don't spend enough time in Christian fellowship or in the fellowship of others. In true fellowship, not just boasting around, joking, trying to look cool. I'm talking about true, authentic, heartfelt fellowship. So that's my list, and that's this episode. My voice is a little weak in this episode. I've just been battling a cold and or allergies. I'm not sure. I usually don't have that big of a problem with allergies, but this year the pollen just seems to have hit me hard. Either that or it happened in conjunction at the same time with a cold. Whatever the case, I've been battling something with my sinuses and my throat and my chest. And so if you can tell that my voice sounds a little weak, it is, and I hope that didn't turn you off too much. Listen at the end of the podcast for ways you can get in touch with us through feedback, and I'll have that information for you during the closing. I'm so glad you took some time with me and helped keep me company on my commute. Until next time, I'm Michael Blackston. This is Road Noise. If you'd like to get in touch with me, here's how you can do it. We do have a website. It's www.roadnoisepodcast.com. You can also reach us via email at roadnoisepodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/roadnoisepodcast. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Tumblr, and I believe Michael Blackston is my name there. And I have a hotline, 706-389-0401. Just make sure you put Road Noise in the About section or reference Road Noise somehow, so I know it's this podcast you're talking about, because this phone number also serves as the contact number for other podcasts of mine as well. So, until next time, thank you for listening. Thanks for sitting in the passenger seat with me as we learn to live life 1 mile at a time.